Panic is spreading, and store shelves are emptying faster than we've seen in years. Across America, shoppers are loading their carts with everything from canned goods to new appliances, fearing that tomorrow's prices will make today's feel like a bargain. Inflation is refusing to let up, and with President-elect Donald Trump set to take office on January 20th, 2025, now just days away, his new economic policies, like steep tariffs on imports, are about to add fuel to the fire. For months, economists have warned that rising costs and supply chain issues could lead to a new wave of consumer anxiety. Now it's here. People are rushing to stockpile essential goods before it's too late, and the frenzy is creating ripple effects that could drive prices even higher. What's causing this surge, and how will it impact your daily life? Stick around. We're breaking it all down. If you find this content valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Economy Explorer so you don't miss a single update on the road ahead. Current economic conditions. The inflation that won't quit. Inflation, it's the silent force that erodes purchasing power, and for many Americans, it's becoming impossible to ignore. At 2.7%, the current inflation rate may seem modest compared to the peak levels of recent years, but it's still above the Federal Reserve's 2% target. And this small difference has a significant impact. Imagine buying the same groceries you did last year, but now paying 10% more for staples like bread and milk. The numbers may appear small on paper, but when stretched over months, they hit hard, especially for middle and lower income families. The Federal Reserve has been raising interest rates to control inflation, but progress has been slow. Some economists argue that the Fed's approach might be too cautious, while others fear it could trigger a recession. Meanwhile, prices for essentials like rent, utilities, and food continue climbing, leaving Americans with fewer choices and tighter budgets. For millions, every dollar feels like it's doing less work. Why panic buying has begun. Here's where things get tricky. Inflation alone is enough to worry consumers, but now it's being paired with uncertainty about the incoming administration's economic policies. History tells us that uncertainty drives behavior. During the 1970s oil crisis, for instance, fear of scarcity led to long lines at gas stations and empty shelves in stores. Today's situation is eerily similar. With President-elect Donald Trump planning to impose steep tariffs on imported goods, consumers are rushing to buy items now to avoid paying significantly more later. Consider this. Even a 10% increase in tariffs could mean hundreds of dollars in additional costs for big-ticket items like refrigerators, laptops, or cars. The fear of being caught unprepared is driving people to act now, much like the early days of the pandemic when toilet paper became more valuable than gold in some households. What the numbers say. The data supports this shift in behavior. Recent surveys reveal that nearly a quarter of Americans are buying in bulk or making large purchases in anticipation of rising costs. Retailers are reporting an uptick in sales for durable goods, while supply chain experts warn that increased demand may lead to temporary shortages. These trends are fueling a cycle. The more people buy, the scarcer goods become, and the higher prices go. But this is where things get even more complicated. The looming tariffs and shifting trade policies aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They have the potential to ripple through every corner of the economy. What will that mean for your wallet and the cost of everyday essentials? Let's unpack the full picture in the next section. You won't want to miss this. Impact of anticipated tariffs. The weight of tariffs. How policy hits your pocket. Tariffs are not just political buzzwords. They're economic tools that can reshape what you pay for everyday goods. Take the last major tariff wave in 2018. A 20% tariff on washing machines led to a similar increase in their retail prices. Suddenly, families across America found themselves paying significantly more for a basic household appliance. Now, as President-elect Donald Trump prepares to impose sweeping new tariffs, the stakes are even higher. Trump's proposed policies include a 25% tariff on imports from neighboring countries like Mexico and Canada, and up to 60% on goods from China. These measures aim to promote domestic manufacturing, but the reality is that most goods we rely on, electronics, clothing, even food, are imported. When import costs rise, companies pass those increases to consumers. For the average American, that means higher prices on everything from a pair of sneakers to the laptop you're using right now. Electronics, a technology price surge. Let's focus on electronics, a sector where tariffs could cause the most noticeable pain. Nearly 90% of gaming consoles sold in the U.S. are imported from China. Under the proposed 60% tariff, these consoles could see price hikes of $200 or more. For families saving up for a new console, this isn't just inconvenient, it's a potential deal-breaker. Laptops and smartphones aren't spared either. Analysts predict the average laptop could become $357 more expensive, while smartphone prices might rise by $150 or more. For tech-dependent households, these increases create tough choices: upgrade now or hold on to older, slower devices. The effects don't stop at personal use. Small businesses reliant on affordable electronics could also face budget constraints. Household essentials, appliances, and more. Tariffs won't just make luxuries pricier, they'll also hit essentials. Appliances like washing machines, dishwashers, and refrigerators, already expensive items, are expected to see 15 to 20% price increases. Picture this: a $500 washing machine could soon cost $600. These seemingly small jumps add up, especially for households that need to replace multiple items at once. Even everyday goods like cleaning supplies and toiletries could see price hikes due to rising costs for raw materials and imported packaging. For many families, this creates a ripple effect, forcing them to tighten budgets and cut back on other expenses. Food and clothing, everyday necessities at risk. Now, let's talk about food and clothing. Two categories that touch every household. Imported textiles used in clothing production could face higher costs, leading to a 10 to 15% increase in retail prices. Meanwhile, tariffs on agricultural imports, including fruits and vegetables, could drive grocery bills higher. Items like bananas and avocados, staples for many, could become luxury items overnight. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Rising prices can lead to reduced demand, which could shrink inventory levels. Retailers may stock fewer items, creating the kind of shortages that spark panic buying and further strain supply chains. It's a vicious cycle, and we've seen it before during the pandemic when empty shelves led to skyrocketing prices on basic goods. In the next section, we'll examine how consumers are responding to these looming changes and the strategies they're using to stay ahead of the curve. The ripple effects of these tariffs are only beginning. What happens next could reshape our economy. Consumer behavior and real-life examples. Stockpiling, preparing for the unknown. Picture this: store aisles bustling with shoppers, carts piled high with everything from canned goods to home appliances. It's not Black Friday, it's a response to growing uncertainty about the future of prices. With news of rising tariffs and persistent inflation, people are taking matters into their own hands, stockpiling goods to avoid paying more down the line. This isn't just a passing trend, it's a deliberate shift in behavior as Americans brace for economic changes that could redefine their spending habits. Surveys indicate that nearly 1 in 4 Americans are actively buying in bulk or making large purchases now to sidestep future price hikes. The items flying off shelves aren't limited to food or cleaning supplies. Electronics, cars, and household appliances are in equally high demand. It's a strategy rooted in both logic and fear as consumers try to stay ahead of price surges tied to upcoming tariffs and market fluctuations. Big purchases. Timing is everything. Timing is becoming everything for consumers, especially when it comes to big-ticket items. Electronics like laptops, gaming consoles, and smartphones are some of the first to feel the pressure of impending price increases. With projections of up to 45% hikes on items like gaming consoles and significant jumps in laptop costs, many buyers are prioritizing these purchases now, fearing they'll soon be out of reach. The same goes for household appliances. Whether it's replacing an old refrigerator or upgrading a decades-old washing machine, consumers are opting to buy today rather than risk paying hundreds more tomorrow. Cars, too, are high on the list. Anticipated tariffs on imported vehicles and parts are nudging buyers into showrooms earlier than planned, hoping to lock in current prices before the cost of owning a car climbs even higher. The snowball effect of scarcity. What starts as precautionary behavior often spirals into a self-perpetuating cycle. Increased demand leads to temporary shortages, creating the illusion of scarcity. This, in turn, drives even more people to buy now, further straining inventories. Retailers, bracing for higher import costs, are already raising prices preemptively, which only adds to the urgency felt by consumers. The result is a cascading effect, one we've seen before. Think back to the early pandemic days when the fear of empty shelves drove people to hoard essentials like toilet paper and hand sanitizer. Today, the same psychology is at play, but it spans across multiple sectors, from groceries to high-end electronics and even vehicles. How are you planning? The real question is, how prepared are you for these changes? Do you have a strategy for managing rising costs, or are you holding out, hoping prices won't climb as predicted? In the next section, we'll uncover how these shifts in consumer behavior could spark larger economic repercussions, disrupting industries and reshaping supply chains. Stay tuned. What lies ahead could impact us all. A turning point for the American consumer. Throughout history, times of economic uncertainty have brought out the resilience and the fears of consumers. From the Great Depression to the oil crises of the 1970s, people have adjusted their behaviors in response to the shifting tides of the economy. Today, we stand at a similar crossroads. Inflation remains stubborn, tariffs loom large, and the ripple effects of these challenges are being felt in every household. But the real question is, how will we respond? The surge in panic buying, stockpiling, and early big-ticket purchases is more than a reaction to rising prices. It's a reflection of how deeply connected we all are to the global economy. When a tariff on a foreign product is announced, it's not just policy. It's a signal that ripples through industries, supply chains, and eventually into our wallets. These changes force us to think ahead, act faster, and adapt to a reality where every decision could mean saving or spending hundreds of dollars more. But let's not forget the larger implications. This isn't just about individual budgets, it's about the cascading effects on industries, wages, and even economic growth. The decisions we make now, whether as consumers, businesses, or policymakers, will shape the months and years ahead. Are we prepared for what's next, or are we simply reacting to the pressures of the moment? What's your next step? As you reflect on the challenges we've discussed, take a moment to think about how they impact your life. Are there strategies you can adopt to stay ahead of rising prices? Are there ways to support businesses or policies that might ease these economic pressures? These aren't just hypothetical questions. They're ones we all need to answer together. Thank you for being a part of this important conversation. If you found this video insightful, please like, share, and subscribe to Economy Explorer for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world. And don't forget to check out one of the suggested videos on your screen. We're grateful to have you here, exploring the future with us.